Do we have any public comment cards? Good, no. On to the next thing. Approval of the summary of actions for the Citizens Advisory Committee. Has everybody reviewed that? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to accept.
Second.
Yolanda Vega motions to approve. And who said second?
I did. Steve.
Oh, and Stephen Smith said he does. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. That's approved. Move on to the next thing. You got to get this hammer away from me. Oh, I love to use it.
It's a gavel, Michael.
It's a hammer to me.
Okay.
Please take a look at the CAC attendance log. Make sure that everything is correct there. If you have any questions, please let Frida know. Fifi? Okay. And if everything's in order, then we will move on to the review of the City of San Pablo's Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. Is there a representative here? There you are.
Whatever's normal. Thank you.
Whatever you'd like. Whatever you'd like. Whatever's less formal, I'm happy with whatever. Chairman and Commissioners, Michelle Rodriguez, Director of Development Services for the City of San Pablo. Thank you for having me here this evening. I've been asked to come this evening and give you a brief overview of the Growth Management Program checklist that's in your packet for the period year 2014 and 15. And I'll give you a highlight of some of the significant actions. We completed a general plan amendment, a specific plan amendment, and an EIR addendum for Doctors Medical Center, changing that land use designation from its institutional use over to commercial mixed use as a result of the district wanting to sell the property and us needing to make that available to the general market. We also continue and collected and reported at that time the regional STMP fees that we were obtaining as part of our development process. Our City Council adopted the housing element update, which we submitted to OPR and HCD and received approval for an 8-year update on that. We also did our annual housing report the year after that. Our housing units are fairly small. We're built out. We do a lot of reconstruction of existing units. We had 32 units in 2014, all at moderate level, and in 2015, 29 units, the majority of them at very low income. Those were a variety of single-family, duplex and triplex, as well as multi-family development. We contributed to the technical memo with the West Contra Costa High Capacity Transit Study. We continue to participate in a number of their committees. We also were thankful to receive an MTC grant of $100,000 for a citywide bicycle and pedestrian master plan, which we kicked off that year. It recently went to Planning Commission this month. We're very excited about having that, and we did a fairly extensive public outreach process with that. We also did a Safe Routes to School needs assessment for our Downer Elementary School. We have multiple elementary schools, and just a short time ago, 4 years ago, we didn't have any Safe Routes to School, so we're slowly plugging away at that. I think the bicycle master plan will make some differences in that. I think there's some real issues related to the economy, our safety issues, children not being able to afford bicycles, parents worried about their safety, and us doing a better job of lighting directions from homes over to schools. We also received a CCTA PDA, Priority Development Area Implementation Planning Grant, and that was to conduct a targeted industry study. This was a really interesting study, and what we did is we looked at the economy for the next 3 years, what industries would be of greatest growth, and then now what we're looking at is the 4 identified locations. We've initiated land use changes to increase the density. One property has just been sold to a developer, which is going to be a combination of commercial and industrial. That's our existing City Hall site. We've now completed the CEQA document for the new City Hall site, so that'll be exciting. The other thing that's next is going to be a transit-oriented development, which will be at Contra Costa, adjacent to Contra Costa Community College at the intersection of San Pablo Avenue and Rumrell, to make way for possible BART or high-speed capacity transit at that location. We also participated in ICM stakeholder meetings, and the city constructed a new server room to support the ICM operators. We also did a Rumrell Complete Streets project. That was also part of a grant, and with that, we did a very extensive stakeholder outreach process as well. That was a multi-city collaboration with the city of Richmond. And what we were attempting to do is link Contra Costa Community College to the BART in Richmond. And so that was what that Complete Street project was. And then right at the end of that, as part of the adoption, we submitted an ATP grant, which we won for $4 million. It's for construction of a quarter of that, which is now in the engineering design phase. Also, we received, we completed the San Pablo Avenue Complete Streets plan, and this is going to really be significant. This was also with the City of Richmond, Public Works and Development Services, again, multi-agency collaboration. And at the conclusion of that, we got a $10 million grant for design, which is now, we've completed design and we're about to go out to bid for that. And that's going to make a real difference. If you drive on North San Pablo Avenue, you can see many people just walking down the center of the road. We approved our CIP with an emphasis on ADA enhancement, hillside stabilization, park improvements, variety of traffic safety issues, and economic development. That concludes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions?
Michelle, I have questions. The high-speed location you were talking about next to Contra Costa College, tell me a little more about that.
This is on the west side of the college, just adjacent to where the transit hub is, and it will be on county affordable housing lands to begin with. So we've been speaking with Board of Supervisor Joya, along with the county housing director, and the idea would be is that we would rebuild the entire triangle of their HUD supported housing into new units, and then in addition to that, build a variety of mid-range and upper market housing units to pay and offset the cost of those additional units. And then in addition to that, we have several triangle properties adjacent to that. The idea would be to do a combination of master plan, which we recently got grant funding for from WICTAC, another $200,000 for that. So we'll be increasing the densities, doing a specific plan essentially, and then expanding our priority development area as part of the update to the Plan Bay Area, the Plan Bay Area update. And then going back to MTC on adoption of the PDA adjustment, and then to our council with increasing density ranges. So it'll be a combination of land use, transportation, housing.
So a transit village type of?
It will. We'll be looking at a variety of the transportation as part of the bus, and then high-speed rail and possibly a BART, trying to decide how that might lay out in combination with their staff.
I have a question. The Contra Costa County is the fourth wealthiest county in the state, with a median income of $97,000 a year. However, there are a whole lot of people who are well below that at around $23,000, $24,000 a year and can't even afford the housing. So my question is, do you have a good handle on how many people are at or below the poverty level in your town?
Well, there's a combination of factors that play into that. To easily 35 to 40% of our population is at or below. But there's a lot of other interesting nuances to that. We have 60% Spanish speaking. We have almost 70% rental housing, with the majority of housing being absentee owners. Our housing stock was built at the turn of the century and was supposed to be for short-term occupation. So when you look at the housing, we had to develop a residential health and safety program in order to ensure that the properties were meeting the basic Title 24 requirements. They are not. We still have knob and tube wiring in a lot of those houses. A lot of those houses, a big fire danger. And when you combine that with low-income folks, there's a lot of challenges around that.
So does the city own those properties? Is that something that contractors are taking care of, or you're pushing the owners to take care of?
We have a city-adopted ordinance that requires any rental property have a certification that it meets basic health and safety standards, and so they have to have that. And based upon when they last had it and the level of violations, they have to bring it back up to standard. And so it's an ongoing program with multiple building inspectors in collaboration with code enforcement.
So with that in mind, and the newer developments, how are you controlling rent from rising too far, too fast, and keeping these people out of homes?
We have no ordinance addressing that problem.
Question.
So I can understand why there's a high proportion of bicycle riders and transit users in San Pablo, which is great, because recently I was at an event at Salesian High School, and coming out, and it took me to get from I can't remember what the intersection is there at San Pablo Avenue heading towards Salesian, but to then get across the I-80 at San Pablo Dam Road took about 15 minutes, and that was about half a mile. So I know that you're looking forward to getting that interchange redone. What is the time frame on that? I mean, I know that's primarily Caltrans responsible for that, but what do you know from the city's perspective?
They've just completed the design. They're going through a variety of permitting with external agencies, federal and state, and they're supposed to be breaking ground in the next year. It's pretty bad, and that's also a major entry to our casino, which is
Michelle, a question about the safe routes to school. What street is it that the children have to cross in order to get to school? Is that San Pablo?
There's it depends on what school we're talking about. We have elementary schools and middle schools, and then our kids go to Richmond High School, and now we're having popping up of private schools. And so there are quite a few. If you look on the west side of our town, there's quite a few students within the school district who actually have to walk from the county lands across 2 rows of railroad and Giant Road in order to get over to some of the schools back in there. Then we have other schools. It depends on where in the city. We have one overpassing over the I-80 for them to be able to get on the other side of 80 up and over I-80 to get to a school adjacent to that between San Pablo Avenue. So it depends on where they're going, and it can be fairly nerve-wracking unsafe.
So I appreciate the fact that the socioeconomics for many of these students is low. Is there a school bus transportation that might be developing in order to accommodate these children?
There is not. And, I think that the idea of the safe routes to school is actually a good one, because I think in the city of San Pablo, what we have, our major participants when we talk about stakeholders are the Hispanic women who are the mothers of large families. They're the ones making the decisions in the family. And the men usually takes the car to work, and so the woman is normally the one who is available with the children. Now we paid the county health department to train them how to now articulate issues and alternatives, and we've started to get them to participate in a variety of our groups. That's a long way of saying that we've now been able to, through our Safe Routes to School route and our Childhood Obesity Task Force, got them to start to walk in groups with the kids. And so now they're identifying who's safe in their neighborhood, and they're meeting at certain locations and doing the walking bus. That's it. And so that's starting to work. I think the bicycling is going to be a lot greater challenge. I think with bicycle thefts being so high, the costs being so high, it's really going to mean that we're going to have to collaborate with bike shops or other folks to rebuild bikes, like in Marin, how they rebuild bikes and make them available at low income like that. But we're going to have to train folks. They can't afford helmets. There's a whole bunch of barriers that need to be addressed there, besides the physical barrier in the field.
I'm thinking as far as walking in groups to school so that it's safe is absolutely commendable, that we're training them in that. And then when the rains start, and then when it's winter. So
That's when the parents start to drive them, because some of these kids can't even afford jackets. So to walk to school isn't really an option.
Any other questions? Well, is there anybody from San Pablo here? No? Anyone close? A nearby city, town, neighborhood?
I make a motion to accept the City of San Pablo's 2014-2015 compliance checklist.
We have a motion from Yolanda and a second from Mark Roberts. Told you I was bad with names. To approve the City of San Pablo's compliance checklist. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll take a look at the City of Richmond's 2014-15 Growth Management Compliance Checklist.
Hi, I'm Jamila Wells. I'm the one that was prepared the checklist for the 2014-2015. And I'm here and available for any questions if you have any regarding our checklist.
Can you give us a summary?
Oh, of course. Where would you like for me to start? We've met a lot of our housing as well as our goals that we had for the actual transportation projects that we were proposing, as well as our bicycle plan and our pedestrian plan for the city overall. And that's something we have been working on for the past couple of years. And they were adopted, and that's highlighted. And then we were very progressive with our meeting our goals for the actual goals that we had outlined in the action plan itself when we had adopted our general plan 2030. Trying to see if there's anything that I could really highlight. And a lot of the projects like the Nevin Avenue improvements that we were planning right around Civic Center, those have been completed. The bikeways and everything. And that concludes my summary.
You had you have a couple of new construction projects you completed for very low and low income. How did you finance those?
A lot of that was done with the developers themselves that came in. We had one on Central Avenue as well as the Nevin project. There were a couple of buildings that were just not reusable, so they were able to be demolished to make way for about 190 units on those two lots.
So you were able to accomplish that without the help of redevelopment or other funds that have been pretty much cut off at this point.
Yes,
Thank
that's
you.
correct.
I'll go after him. Okay, I get to go. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. I just had a question. In the section that says vehicle trip reduction measures that your city's recommending, in section R, you make reference to compressed work week, and it's all about allowing employees to work alternate shifts and that type of thing. So my question to you is, are you working with businesses to get them to start doing this with their employees to reduce the traffic congestion, or is this just a recommendation you're putting out there?
Well, it's a recommendation, and there are some developers that have mentioned that they'd like to do that for their employees, especially over in our No Point Business Park. A lot of those businesses are opting to use that
Okay.
because it's so much easier for the employees
my
to
only
get back
question
and
is
forth.
also, do you offer any kind of programs that they can work with you on, or is this just something that you're throwing out there for them to do? And
Well, it's something that we're primarily throwing out there for them to take advantage of, and we're thinking in the future that we might be able to come up with some policies
okay.
that could
Thank
be
you.
adopted by the council.
I know that voters in your city recently passed a rather contentious rent control ordinance. If you could refresh my memory, that applies to units built before, 1995?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just curious, from your perspective, do you think that is going to have or what kind of effect do you think that is going to have on the upgrading by landlords of their properties going forward to try to make sure that they always meet health and safety standards?
Well, prior to that, our building department, they were really proactive in the sense that they would go out and actually survey about maybe 75% of the housing units within the city and make sure that they were meeting health and safety standards. So we were already doing that prior to them adopting that ordinance. But it's fairly new, and it's even new to staff, so we're still trying to get that program up and going. We have staff that are kind of like doubling from the city manager's office to assist with the program right now, and we're just trying to get a lot of the landlords registered within the city.
How many, do you know how many homeless you have?
Unfortunately, I don't. It would just be a speculation on my part.
The part of the state constitution requires zoning for a homeless facility. Have you guys done that, and have you has anybody built a homeless facility?
Well, we have an organization, a lot of the community organizations down off of Nevin Avenue, and they're proposing to do a 20-bed facility for females, and that's going through the development project cycle right now. So we are trying to get more types of housing like that would address the homeless population within our city.
And how many folks are below the poverty level that are in housing and are at risk for rising rents?
I would say our numbers are fairly low at this point, but I really don't have those hard numbers. I could get that information for you and get back with you on that.
Any other questions? Anybody from Richmond? Well, I move that we accept Richmond's growth management compliance checklist.
I'll second.
I'm sorry? Mr. Weiler, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? And we move on to the next one. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay, City of Pleasant Hill is up.
All right, good evening. My name is Eric Hugh. I'm the senior civil engineer with the City of Pleasant Hill, and I'm the one that prepared the checklist. And with me is Jeff Olson, one of our associate planners from the city, to answer any questions on the planning side. So just a quick summary on the checklist on our part. During calendar years 14 and 15, the city, we believe, are in substantial compliance with the checklist, with the county growth management program. Specifically, we do participate in a multi-jurisdictional group, specifically TransPac in Central County, to develop policies and make sure all the money is spent properly on a regional level. And to support the Central County Action Plan during this 2-year period, the City of Pleasant Hill, we actually completed a number of capital projects along key regional routes of significance, specifically Gulf Club Road, bridge replacement, our complete streets on Contra Costa Boulevard, right in front of Sun Valley Mall, which borders Concord and Pleasant Hill. Buskirk Avenue realignment, which is further just north of here. That was a long project being implemented and finally completed during this time frame. And also the Gary Road Improvement Project Phase 3B. That's a joint project between the City of Pleasant Hill and City of Walnut Creek. Basically, that's also a complete streets project along this very vital east-west regional route, which, as many of you know who live in the area, it's kind of a gem to have. Very rare to have good east-west connector streets for specifically bike and ped. During this period, the city did approve 2 general plan amendments, one specifically to update the circulation element to comply with the complete streets policies, and a second general plan amendment to basically update the housing element of our general plan to address the 8-year planning period from 2015 to 2023. Neither one of the 2 general plan amendments generate more than 100 net new peak hour trips. So that's pretty straightforward on that front. Also, as you can see in front of you, attached to our packet is the housing annual report that was submitted to HCD for calendar year 2014 and 2015, which shows that the City of Pleasant Hill is in compliance. And lastly, just again, pretty straightforward in terms of traffic impact studies. Although we do have some development that went on and approved during this time period, none of the projects that were approved generated more than 100 net new peak hour trips, and so unfortunately nothing exciting to report on that front as well. And at the end of the day, City of Pleasant Hill, we're more of an infill community. We have very, very little open land for new developments. So most of our developments are really tearing down existing facilities, buildings, or uses, and rebuilding. And so usually when you cancel out the existing trips that are generated by a previous tenant, usually it doesn't generate, especially with the same type of use that's zoned, really doesn't generate any net new peak hour trips of substantial amount. We did update our 5-year capital improvement plan during this period, and some of the projects in this plan is currently in construction. I'm sure you'll, if you drive through the city, you'll notice a lot of them. As one of the residents kind of pointed out, it seems like every street in the city is under construction at the moment. But that's in a way, that's a good thing. And we definitely meet our maintenance of effort for the City of Pleasant Hill. Usually we double or triple that amount per year. So yeah, that's a quick summary. I'll turn it over to you guys for any questions.
Just picking up on your maintenance of effort, because I think you're the only city where you start off with zero on your 18% funds, you get the allocation, you spend every dollar, and wind up with zero.
We try to do a net zero for that particular account. That account was created just for return to source, and the real number is probably a little less than that. That's the account where money comes in and goes straight out. Keep it simple.
I'm curious, with Pleasant Hill, your development is, as you said, predominantly infill. So when you reconstruct in an area, what's your height limit now?
35. Uh, 35 feet. It's been that for quite a while. 2.5 stories, indoor 35 feet for commercial and residential.
Oh, for commercial also. Mm-hmm. I have to commend your city. I sit in traffic going to JFK, and the signage is fabulous. There is delay, but they're very, very clear when we need to merge, and then when the lanes open up again. And I, for one, am very grateful for that. I really like what your city looks like too. You really maintain that city in a manner that's welcoming. It feels community minded, and the space that you developed in there. I think you've done a really good job with that. So I commend you.
Speaking of traffic, are you guys taking a look at smart or adaptive signal controls?
We are kind of looking at that. I know City of Concord and City of Walnut Creek are in the Central County area. At least they're usually the two cities that are kind of in the forefront of these new technologies. We do coordinate with them collaborate with them in terms of lessons learned and stuff like that. The biggest difference between us and Concord and Walnut Creek, who are, I believe, the only two cities in Central County that are utilizing this technology, is really our budget, our maintenance budget specifically. It's one thing to get grant dollars to purchase the hardware and implement these devices, but it's another thing to have the local resources to maintain these over time. Not to mention the cost over the next 2 years to debug the code and the timing, which Walnut Creek I believe they're still working on Ignacio Valley Road. And so usually our approach for these kind of new technology is to, once other cities kind of try out the technologies and we have very clear lessons learned, we're usually kind of in the mid-pack, just given our very limited resources to try new technologies. And also for me personally, since I'm also the traffic engineer for the city, one of the lessons that I've learned is that there's a very big difference. It's like most traffic improvement options. There are always its share of pros and cons, and in this case, there's a big difference between public perception and what is the real improvement that's shown on a model or traffic report, traffic study. What I found specifically on, for example, Contra Costa Boulevard, which is our main north-south corridor, people perceive a significant improvement when they can reliably depend on a certain number of stops and goes, so to speak. If they're going from south to north, for example, they always know they're going to get by, 5 greens on 5 different, continuous green for 5 different signals, and always stop at Taylor Boulevard, for example, because that's the way we intentionally timed it. And they'll have another, 5 greens following that, and they find that consistency, it just for some reason psychologically makes them feel that, okay, there's a significant improvement. Versus the problem with adaptive system is that you're giving that control to a computer software, which based on traffic flow conditions may change, and that variable may not. It really it's hard for average drivers to perceive that, and it could generate a lot of complaints just because people don't understand it, and they'll think, how come I get to just fine, this one day, and the next day I'm stopping at 4 different lights. And so, to me, it's a very fine balance. And at the end of the day, fortunately, we so far don't have the same kind of traffic volume as Walnut Creek and Concord have on some of their arterials. And so I don't think we've gotten to that level yet where we really need adaptive systems yet. But that's definitely something that we're keeping an eye on in case we do go to the next level.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Well, I'm Chadwick Weiler. I'm from the city of Pleasant Hill.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming tonight. I had a couple questions. So given your constraints budget-wise, how are you feeling about Measure K and the infusion that you all should be having coming in from that? I mean, the comment was made about the whole city being under construction. Will that let you hit some more priority street improvements, complete streets you mentioned, like, for instance, Oak Park? There's some places there where you have sidewalk, bike path, and then nothing 100 feet later it picks back up again.
Yeah, so the exact expenditure for Measure K, which is our local measure, for those of you not from Pleasant Hill, it's still being technically hashed out by the committee. I think they're scheduled to meet tomorrow night. But what we do know for now is obviously a certain percentage of that fund is going to go to the new library. And the majority of the remaining balance will go into our street resurfacing program. And so what that allows us to do is the city has divided up all their arterials into 20 different neighborhood zones. And so basically accelerate the cycle clock. Before when we'd be on a 25, 30-year cycle, now we're on a 10, 15-year cycle, which it's a substantial improvement. And so, why are we so busy this summer? Partly because instead of resurfacing 2 neighborhoods, we're resurfacing 6. And so, that coupled with all the federal projects on the major arterials, yeah, it feels like, and also utilities for some reason they're going hot and heavy. I mean, it feels like every street is torn up. But yeah, that's the real benefit of Measure K. Most of the new sidewalk installs, like on Oak Park, for example, unfortunately, that will be still dependent on state and federal grant dollars that we're able to secure. Just because, the real intent of Measure K, for the most part, is to maintain facilities that the city currently has, which without Measure K definitely is not adequate to maintain properly. And even with Measure K, I think we're just kind of have a net balance in terms of maintenance needs and revenue. But it's definitely, unfortunately, still not enough to make additional improvements. And so, so any kind of improvement project you see out there, including complete streets and any kind of new bike lanes and stuff like that, usually is partially funded with state and federal grant dollars.
Any more questions? I have one more. It's kind of selfish. For all new and existing commercial or high-density housing properties, are you providing incentives or requiring or otherwise encouraging the installation of electric vehicle charging stations or solar panels?
We don't have any requirements at this time, but we've incorporated into our citywide design guidelines. Our Architecture Review Commission certainly encourages them to. A recent project next to Best Buy down the road here, there's a 44-unit residential project that's displacing a data center that's been vacant for about 3+ years. They were required to install some as part of their conditions of approval, both in the guest parking spaces and not in the garages, but to have the wiring, the pre-wiring for it. Also, that project is also getting a little bit off the Measure K question, was there'll be a new traffic signal light at the T intersection of Mayhew and Buskirk, and for anyone familiar with that intersection, you'd appreciate it if you ever drove that intersection. So.
Any more questions?
Of course. Affordable housing percentages. I believe the Mayhew project might be a good example of what had started off as a original developer suggested and then kind of got chipped away after public comment. What's the city's stance on percentages for affordable or at-market housing? I guess I'm taking the question that Michael usually asks.
Our stance and what, I mean, I can tell you what the results were of the recent projects. I don't know if that's answering your question.
Yeah, results, or maybe what is it the city trying to push 10%, 5%? What do they seek from developers maybe?
Well, 10% is the requirement, or 20% is the requirement. Some projects have done part in lieu fees and part actually providing the units. Recent proposals, the DeNova project near Taylor and Mercury Way, it was a 10-acre hillside site undeveloped, 18 homes, mostly at the lower elevations, of course. Of those 18 homes, 4 will have secondary or ADU units. The Mayhew project, out of the 44 units approved, 9 of those will actually have ADU units. So we push them at all levels, but if they choose to do the in lieu fee option, that's always available as well.
Any more questions? Do we have a motion?
I motion that we accept the City of Pleasant Hills Growth Management Plan.
And I forgot your name again.
Chad.
Chadwick moves to approve. Yolanda Vega seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
And up next, we have the City of Martinez. Do we have a representative? We have no representative? Well, what do you think, folks?
Jason's from Marinda. Do you want to fill in? No.
Holy cow.
So they submitted it and they're not present?
Yeah, they submitted it. They're not present. We can, I didn't see any problems with it myself. Anybody else take a look at that?
I have a question about if anybody can answer it for the City of Martinez. Just looking through this, do they have a high homeless problem that is, because when you read through here, there's a lot of permits that it looks like is happening for the homeless. Or am I just not reading real well here? Does anybody know?
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Well, we can approve or not approve as far as that goes.
Well, can we postpone a
Yeah,
decision on this until they can get here?
I move to postpone.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? And we will postpone the review of the City of Martinez calendar years 2014-15 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. We really need a shorter name for that. Mr. Engelman, you're up.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And delighted to be here this evening and present to you the 2017 draft countywide transportation plan. I've given you a little trifold flyer that gives you the summary of the plan. And I'd like to do a brief presentation. Just so you're aware, this is what volumes 1 and 2 of the plan look like, and this is what the draft environmental impact report looks like. And these can be downloaded from the authority's website or from our CTP update website. And if you really, really want a hard copy, we can make you a hard copy. So just a little bit of background on why we're doing a countywide transportation plan. It's actually required by Measure C and Measure J, and the plan includes vision, goals, and strategies, which we revisit every now and then and update. And we also want to take into account what's happened at the local and regional level and try to look into the future. We recalibrate, reforecast, reposition, rethink our transportation future based upon what we see in our forecasts and what we've gotten from the public in terms of new input. As you all know, the voters of Contra Costa approved Measure C in 1988, which established the half-cent sales tax. It included our very innovative growth management program, where you just reviewed 3 cities' growth management checklists. In 2004, the voters updated the Measure C by authorizing a 25-year extension. The first one in 88 only required a simple majority, and the 2004 measure required a supermajority. All combined, the two measures generate over $3 billion in 2017 dollars. So as far as the plan's concerned, the first one was in 95. We did an update in 2000. We did another update in 2004 that focused on Measure J. The last adopted plan was in 2009. We've been working on this update actually since about 2012. We're supposed to update the plan every 4 to 5 years, so we're a little bit delayed in that. But just to tell you where we've been, we started in 2012-13 with the updating of the action plans for routes of regional significance. And when I first got here, there were arguments between cities that were really in the same sub-area. So you might have heard about arguments between Richmond and San Pablo, or between Concord and Walnut Creek, or between the city of Pittsburgh and Antioch. And through Measure C, creating these regional transportation planning committees, all of the cities have to participate in this unique multi-jurisdictional collaborative planning process. It's a cooperative process, and they meet monthly. Their elected officials meet monthly, and their staff meet monthly to talk about the things that they really can't address themselves, the things where they have to get together as a group of cities to address transportation issues. And one of the big deals is what goes on with these major routes like Ignacio Valley Road, which runs, from Railroad Avenue, Kirker Pass, Ignacio Valley Road through, I think, 4 jurisdictions. Who's responsible for the congestion on that road? How do you address it? And how do they coordinate it with Highway 4 and the congestion on Highway 4? So these action plans for routes of regional significance are an opportunity for cities to work together to set performance standards for regional routes. And so in 2014, we cobbled together the action plans, which were all updated, and developed a draft CTP and an EIR. We went through a very vigorous public participation effort in the fall of 2014. And in the midst of that, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission updated its CTP guidelines. And so we found actually that our 2014 plan did not comply with those guidelines. And we made an effort to update the plan at that time. Through that community input process in fall of 2014, basically what we heard was better BART, smoother traffic, and fix the roads, fill the potholes. But there were also calls for improving bus service, improving service for seniors and people with disabilities, providing more alternatives for pedestrians and bicyclists, and addressing the environment. So continuing with the timeline, in 2015, then we developed another draft of the plan that actually met the revised guidelines, and we were getting ready to issue that at the end of 2015, and we found ourselves in a situation where the state had shifted the measurements for traffic impacts from level of service to vehicle miles traveled, which is something that our action plans did not very well address. We were also looking at Measure X going to the ballot, and we did not at that time have a draft expenditure plan that we could analyze in the plan. So between the vehicle miles traveled issue and not being able to really look at an adopted draft transportation expenditure plan, we again postponed work on the CTP and went forward with the ballot measure, which, as you know, in November 2016, it did not pass. So when the dust settled after the election, we came back to the authority in December 2016 with a work plan for the 2017 CTP, and by golly, this calendar year, come hell or high water, we're going to get this plan adopted, or so we think. So what are some of the background things we're looking at? This is actually a slide that MTC put together. I think it's very effective. It shows you how Caltrain ridership is going up at the regional level on the peninsula. BART ridership has really grown since the year 2000. Congestion and delay are increasing region-wide with the recovery from the recession, which is the blue line. But at the same time, transit ridership, if you look at transit ridership per capita, it's completely flat or down from 2000. And average commute times are fairly stable, increasing a little bit. If we look at only at Contra Costa, we have seen a jump in traffic with the economic recovery, and you've all experienced this. Gosh, past couple of years, seems like everybody's driving everywhere. So we're able to chart this in terms of vehicle hours of delay, daily vehicle hours of delay for the county as a whole. Looking at the future, we are projecting a 23.6% increase in households by 2040 for Contra Costa. This is the county of Contra Costa, and that means close to 90,000 new homes. About 3,000 new homes per year, pretty big number. And then in terms of jobs, 122,600 new jobs, a 35% increase in employment.
What kind of jobs? Oh, curious.
We have a breakdown of those jobs. They're broken down into 10 different economic sectors: service jobs, white collar, blue collar. But I can't give you that information off the top of my head. So, in terms of current funding, there are two scenarios we look at, and the MTC guidelines require that we set 10-year priorities and 20-year priorities. So the 10-year priorities are consistent with the adopted Regional Transportation Plan for the Bay Region, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's Regional Transportation Plan, RTP, and they basically assign us $3.67 billion in 2017 dollars, and we've already allocated all of that to roadways, ped bike, transit, as shown here. And there's a bunch more money actually that goes into transit operations and maintenance, which is not shown here. And then for the countywide plan, one of the things I really enjoy about the countywide plan is it's not financially constrained. They haven't done that to us yet. The feds and the region still allow us to have a financially unconstrained countywide transportation plan, which means that we can do a little bit of dreaming and develop some new projects. So if somebody says, hey, I want a BART extension, then okay, how much is it? $3 billion. We'll throw it on in there. It's financially unconstrained. So the right-hand column here, the 20-year project cost, we have estimated that we could garner as much as $6.5 billion in future funds. And that assumes that we would get some kind of a new revenue source at Contra Costa County. It could be Son of Measure X, or it could be a new user fee, or some kind of cap and trade source. We've been talking about bridge toll increases. We also have more recently this Senate Bill 1, which increases the gas tax. So assuming that we get a new source, we've identified the projects, and these are specific projects that are in this volume 2 of the plan here, and listed them all out, and we get $6.4 billion. So the total is over $10 billion in projects. This does not include all the programs. There's a lot of funding for programs that's really not shown here, and it's difficult to estimate that out 30 years because it's very dependent on the income, how much income can we get. And if we said let's have a bus program, I mean, it could be billions more dollars. So still with that money, there's things we can afford, and there are things that we might not be able to afford. And so this map just kind of shows you in green and purple. I know it's a little hard to read that what are the things we can afford today, and what are the things we need future funding for, and we have to do some picking and choosing on what we're going to fund in the future. But some of the things we will fund are the regional express lanes. We're building the express lanes on I-680. We have a lot of money going into the 684 interchange to try to get rid of those low relief loops and that terrible weaving section that's left on Highway 4. And things like bus rapid transit. The San Pablo bus rapid transit is in the CTP. So I hope you have, as your handout, if you got your handout, we have the listing of all the projects for each of the sub-areas. This isn't in the trifold. This is actually in the 8.5 by 11 thing. And so I'm not going to go through all these, but if you want to see what projects in your area are in the RTP and are in the 20-year, what we call the LRTP. They're listed here, west, and this is central and east, and then southwest. So you can go on through that, and it kind of gives you a quick summary of what's in the plan. As far as the contents, there's a volume 1, a volume 2, and then a whole lot of supplemental reports. So volume 1 tries to orient the reader to who we are, what we do, look at our future challenges and opportunities in transportation, which is something this committee, I hope, enjoys doing. We've worked very hard on updating our vision. We did this back in 2013, and so we have a vision. We have 5 goals and strategies to achieve the goals. The investment program, which is this 10 and 20-year list of projects, and an implementation program in the last chapter of Volume 1. What are all the things the authority can do? What are all the things the authority will do to implement the countywide plan? And then Volume 2, we take a closer look at all of the systems, the road systems, the HOV system, the bike and trail system, the bus transit systems, and explore a little bit of how those operate and what they're currently doing, what they might be able to do in the future. The action plans, we have summaries of the action plans now. The full documents are available for download but are not included in hard copy in the plan. There's a performance assessment of major projects over $25 million, and there's an equity analysis to determine whether the impacts of these projects, of any of these projects or programs, adversely affect low-income or minority communities more than they would the rest of Contra Costa. The supplemental reports include the draft EIR. There's a technical appendix to the draft EIR, the full action plans. We have a PDA investment and growth strategy now that's been updated on our website. That's the priority development area investment and growth strategy, how we're going to help build diverse transit-oriented development communities, and the countywide bike plan. So in terms of implementation, there's a big push in the plan to accelerate the deployment of electric vehicles and low fuel, zero-emission vehicles, rather, to achieve greenhouse gas reductions. We do look at the governor's executive order, which says that by the year 2050, we have to be 80% below the 1990 levels, which is a very, very ambitious goal for transportation. And this graph shows what would happen if we did nothing. In the red line, what happens when we implement the Clean Fuels Bill and the PAVLI 1 and 2 and low carbon fuel standards. So really the graph goes down quite a bit just from technology, and then we have to press further to achieve the governor's goal. And what we're finding is if we had a 58% penetration of zero emission vehicles and a 15% reduction in VMT per capita, we could achieve the governor's goal, which is the purple line. We actually hope that by implementing the CTP, we'll be able to achieve the green line. So accelerated deployment of electric vehicles, more work on reducing VMT per capita, we can actually have a gradual straight line out to 2050.
I have a question for you on that.
Can I take questions at the
Sure.
end, just so I don't lose my momentum here, because I found it goes on forever if we take questions in the middle. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 more slides. The implementation of innovative corridor management strategies on I-680, for example. We're implementing the express lanes, and we're also very interested in deploying autonomous vehicles, and we have in the city of Concord the largest autonomous vehicle test bed, Gomentum Station, in the nation, and we are partnering with car manufacturers and equipment manufacturers testing these vehicles out. And the little shuttle you see on the right there is running around now at Bishop Ranch. It's a completely autonomous shuttle that picks up passengers on demand and takes them to where they want to go. So we hope to see more of this. We can't really widen the freeways. We can't really double deck them. We're looking at using what we have. So in terms of advancing forward to the next innovation, we do in the plan talk about implementation of City 5.0, which is essentially a city where everything talks to everybody and everything, and notwithstanding the concerns you might have about privacy and information getting leaked out on who you are and where you are, it would be a much safer city and a much more efficient city if the cars and the buses knew where the people were and the people knew where the cars and buses were. And so this fully connected city could actually reduce delays, increase ride sharing, have much more improved traffic flow and driver experience. It is, of course, very data hungry and requires a big data center, but we're looking at that as well. And something like this may go on at the city level, it may go on at the county level, it may go on at the regional level. We still are exploring this opportunity. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. Just so you know, the schedule is we release the draft plan on May 24th. We release the draft EIR on June 16th. We are going to have an open house tomorrow night. Hope you can join us 6:30 to 8:30 in Suite 150, just around the corner here. This building by the security guard's office or desk. Come on by and we'll have some light refreshments, and we'll have staff there and some elected officials if you'd like to chat about the countywide plan. Comment period ends August 1st, so if you have comments, please feel free to submit them. And then the adoption of the plan and the certification of the EIR and adoption of the plan is tentatively scheduled for the fall of 2017. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Everybody looked at me. No, I'm curious. I know there's a lot of, there's the state and federal incentives for purchasing electric vehicles. Are you guys anticipating having any type of incentive program for buying electric vehicles?
So the county and Contra Costa and the Transportation Authority, we are not as much focused on the incentive for the buyer. We hope that the cost of those vehicles will go down. We hope the cost of the battery will go down. You know, it's a new technology, but it's coming along. What we are hoping to do is to reduce the range anxiety, offer more and newer charging stations. And, you know, the charging stations may evolve and change, and so there's a cost involved with, you know, if all your charging stations are, you know, ground wire plug, and then you suddenly go to a wireless connection. For example, the buses in Walnut Creek have a wireless charging system. The bus just pulls up to the BART station and it charges through the pavement, and there's an air gap there. So it's possible that that would work itself into the vehicle mix, which then means you have to have all these pavement charging stations. And the real solution to the range anxiety would be in-motion charging, which could be something we could do on I-680, for example. So if you're running low on battery, you just turn on your charger and you charge from the road, and there's ways to do that in-motion charging through the pavement. So all these things keep evolving and changing, and it's really difficult to know what to invest in and when. It's kind of like the Xerox machine or the copy machine, or, you know, okay, we're going to spend a fortune on this huge monster copy machine, and then, it's obsolete, in a few years. So it's always changing and it's always morphing. But it helps really to invest in these things. The break for the buyer is going to be up to the state to do that and to keep that afloat.
Martin, nice job on the presentation. Thank you. I just have a couple questions. One, it's a little selfish, I guess, but the HOV lanes on 680, we've seen the, in progress signs for, I don't know, it seems like 6 to 8 months. When are those scheduled to go live, or do you know?
Any minute now.
So tomorrow they'll be live. Okay.
I have heard. Well, they have to do an awful lot of testing. They put a lot of wires in the ground for that project. You've got the lights up. I think you've seen that. Yeah. When it opens, they want to make sure they're doing it right. That all the sensors can pick up the cars and all the license plate readers can read the license plates, and there's no false reads from the one lane over and so forth. So there's a lot of calibration going on out there. You can't see it, but they're doing it in the nighttime. And so I've heard it's going to be before the end of summer. So I've been waiting too. I've been watching those signs and waiting for it to open.
Martin, I just have a question about the Gomentum station. I heard last night, actually, that they're actually testing an autonomous bus out there. Is that correct?
Well, we have an autonomous, it's called a shared autonomous vehicle, which is six-seated and six-standing, carries 12.
Oh, like we have in San Ramon and Bishop Ranch?
And the one that's going to Bishop Ranch.
Okay.
There is a big bus coming. I don't know if it's out there yet, but there is something happening with the big bus.
Yeah, so. I heard it from a board member last night. So
I haven't seen it with my own eyes yet, but I've heard it's coming.
And my other question is, one of the discussions here regarding buses was possibly running them on the shoulder on the freeway. Is that part of this plan?
It is, and we have a program called Innovate 680. We conducted a study on I-680 called the I-680 Transit Investment and Congestion Relief Study, and we looked at creating new bus lanes in the median. We looked at BART down the median. We looked at BART underground. But one of the things we determined from that study was that it was feasible on I-680 to run buses on the shoulder and to do it safely. So we're looking at other states where this is done, and we're working with the CHP. The CHP doesn't like it. We're trying to work with them to get them to approve it. And we have to get, of course, the bus company comfortable with it as well. But it is in our program.
Martin, in the past we've had people come to let us know about bus service, and some of these buses are running empty, and some of these buses are not scheduled around either work hours or school hours. So in the $1.39 billion that's targeted for transit, is there going to be a study done on the routes and the convenience to the particular community and use of public transportation?
Well, it's interesting that you should mention that. We just had a presentation from the county bus operators at the authority meeting last June. Well, that was a week ago, wasn't it? We're still in June. And Rick Ramasir reported that bus ridership is down. And so most of the reports were that bus ridership is down. Bus companies are struggling to attract riders, and increased frequency does not necessarily fill up a bus. In fact, it can reduce the productivity of the bus, but what has really helped is when they're free. And so County Connection now has 2 free routes, the Route 4 in downtown Walnut Creek, which has very high ridership, and the Route 5 to Creekside, which also has very high ridership. And what they found is once they take that $2 fare off, the ridership skyrockets. So they're really in a situation where they have to ask, okay, if we're at 17% fare box recovery, is it worth our while to charge when we're actually, we can serve 3 times, 4 times as many people if the ride were free or a lot cheaper. So that's kind of the quandary they're in, and also there's now competition from the Ubers and the Lyfts, and eventually there could be competition from the autonomous vehicles. And when we get to a level 4 autonomous vehicle that can go wherever somebody calls it to go without a driver, that too will create a challenge for the bus companies. So on the flip side, the bus companies are looking at how can we be more flexible, how can we understand where our riders are, where they're waiting, how can we communicate with them, because right now that's still in the early stages where the rider can see where the bus is, but the bus driver doesn't know whether there's somebody waiting at the bus stop or not. So that kind of gets us back to this connected vehicle City 5.0, where if somebody needs a ride, a lot of folks can hear about it, and they can also find a ride that suits their wallet, so to speak. And so the cheaper ride may take a little longer, but it could be a bus that comes, a flexible bus that comes and might even deviate from its fixed route. Might be a smaller bus. But the challenges are enormous. Transit in the suburbs has never really been easy, and we're still struggling with that.
Right, and so our transportation, or our cars are jamming the freeways and jamming our city streets. One of the things that I really like about the free Walnut Creek bus, not so much that it's free, but it comes every 15 minutes. So I'll take the bus. I'll park my car knowing that bus comes every 15 minutes. I don't have to wait an hour and a half for it. Another question, with the Richmond Ferry, the proposal, will it be underwriting that? I'm under the impression that the ferry system doesn't generate a profit.
The Richmond Ferry system is the only system that met the fare box recovery ratio requirements of WETA, the Water Emergency Transportation Authority, or Transit Authority, and so we are implementing that, and there is a subsidy. I think if I recall, they're at about 40% fare box recovery, which is the threshold, or maybe a little higher than that, and so there are a combination of funding sources to provide that other 60% of the funding.
Any more questions? Thank you very much. Shall we move on to committee reports? Do we have any?
You've already heard more about the bus operators' problems than I actually listed in the report. I just said they are under considerable and growing fiscal pressures. The legislative update, there were a couple of things that were very concerning to the authority. One was AB 1479. This was an attempt, or is an attempt, to be very punitive toward organizations who do not respond well to public record requests. In the view of the authority, which tries to operate in a very transparent fashion, this would not only increase the overall cost and delays in responding to these requests, but also introduces fairly substantial punitive damage awards. So the authority is going on record as opposed to AB 1479. And another new bill came up that would essentially force CCTA into the taxi business. And the authority board also voted to oppose that bill. There's also some discussion on the federal level developments as the new administration takes hold. There's quite a bit of discussion going on at the staff levels and in the lobbies about various infrastructure possibilities and plans. This being the last meeting of the fiscal year, and there's some things to be done to prepare for the next fiscal year. So the budget was improved, and was also approved a extension by a year with Stantec Consulting Services for program and project management services. And then, of course, the last two were approvals of the review and the call for projects, one for the STIP program and the one for the second cycle OBAG and Measure J funding programs. So both of those have been approved, and the call for projects has gone out to the various authorities. This also sets the ground rules for how they will be reviewed. So that's pretty much it. I'm available to answer any questions.
Any other reports? What's happening in your neck of the woods? That sort of thing? Nothing exciting? Airplane crashes? Massive fires? Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I have something of interest to the folks out in Far East County. And as you know, the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District is undergoing some severe cutbacks. And they are they're going to a 3-station model. I forgot, Steve, how many we start with? Yeah, we had 8 or 10, so we've lost a whole lot, and we're growing just in Oakley alone at about a 2.3% increase per year. And the money that the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District gets comes from the 1% Proposition 13 money, and they only get 7% of that. So trying to make this as simple as possible is really a little difficult. There was a push on to reallocate Proposition 13 funding. And the problem with that is the tax code, Revenue and Tax Code 99.02, allows you to do that as long as you are not going to, as long as the other agencies agree and they continue on with their current level of service. And the reallocation of Proposition 13 money was disagreeable to a whole lot of different agencies. So we also had 2 tax measures that failed the 2/3 vote. They got the majority, but they failed the 2/3 vote. Huh?
The 2012 vote, I don't even think we got a Simple majority. That was the one that needed 2/3.
Yeah.
Second was a benefit assessment, which needed 50% plus one, failed. The third attempt was not a district attempt. It was attempts by the cities of Brentwood and Oakley to pass utility user taxes, which also just needed a 50% plus one and failed in each jurisdiction. So essentially, there have been three major attempts to increase funding, and all have been voted down.
And in light of that, I'm working on a different plan that won't raise any taxes and won't cause a reduction in service, but that's a work in progress, and it's going to take some time to do that. So that's what we're doing out in Far East Bay.
So for the city of Lafayette, if you haven't experienced our new roundabout on Olympic and Pleasant Hill Road, heads up. I am not kidding. It looks fabulous. What a great idea. It has reduced the congestion, and now there are 3 separate traffic lights that are going to be placed to mitigate traffic. One of them is at the end of Pleasant Hill Road on Raleigh Station Road. The other one is just a couple of feet up the hill, and then the third one is at the top of the hill. So there'll be 3 separate traffic lights, and the next door Burton Valley is just abuzz with people who absolutely are nervous about having traffic lights and having stopped traffic. I don't know when the traffic lights will be actually started, but they're in place, and it'll be interesting to see what that traffic looks like.
Can I just ask you a question? Because I did travel that road, and I did notice all those potential. Is there really a major backup at commute time? Is that the problem? Why do you have so many? And those traffic lights are like 1, 2, 3. They're like one right after the other. That's my only question.
I don't know.
Well, driving 24 every day, whenever 680 gets clogged up, everybody gets off of 680 and goes on Diablo and drives through the middle of Lafayette, and that's sometimes even worse. Any more comments?
So I have a couple of comments. I'm wondering if we can request when representatives come and present their compliance checklist that we request they come prepared with a summary. I thought that the City of San Pablo did an excellent job. She was awesome. And I think that the City of Pleasant Hill also did a very good job. And I think that the City of Richmond, for lack of a better word, unimpressive. I was not impressed, and I felt that she came unprepared, and I've not experienced that before sitting here, so I don't know if that's something that we can request for them to come and provide us a summary. Martin?
Well, Member Vega, the presentation that you got from San Pablo, that's actually a bonus presentation. I mean, that was above and beyond the call of duty. We only ask that they attend the meeting and that they be available to answer questions. The scope of the growth management program is fairly limited, and what you heard a lot from tonight from the cities are things that are not part of the growth management program. So what we're asking them, what you're asking them to do is come and give us a little summary of what's going on in your city, and we always give them a heads up that that's what you're looking for. We know that, but there's a large variability in staff availability at these cities, and there's a large variability, to be honest, in talent, and not everybody can get up and give a smooth summary of what's going on in their city or know, what they're supposed to cover and how they're supposed to cover it. So you're lucky when you get the veterans who've been through it and they know what to do and what to say, and you just have to kind of deal with the situation where you have a checklist and you're basically looking to see whether the city complies. That's the bottom line here is the city in compliance with the growth management program, and the only reason the staff shows up is to answer specific questions if you have them regarding their compliance. So we're at the end of the checklist season. I think we've got just a few more coming in. So we will really hammer on those people and tell them we want a presentation, and then we can retool for next year to make it a little clearer what it is you're looking for. But I've seen some really good presentations here. I remember when the City of Hercules presenter came, and he had been there for 25 years, and each project he said, now this was with city manager number 4, and this was with city manager number 6. This one was city manager number 8. And it was very humorous, but it's also very informative. And so, sometimes we get lucky and get a really good presenter. But we'll try to do what you're asking for. We usually try to contact them by phone, and we can't control it though. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The other comment is, I was just informed that Diane is no longer with our organization, and I wanted to know if there was any way that we can express our gratitude and thanks to her for the years of service that she's provided this committee. I sort of was surprised.
So if you would like to approve a resolution of commendation, we can have that available to you at the next meeting, and we can invite Diane to come back and say goodbye. She is going to be enjoying the good life as a stay-at-home mom, so don't feel too sorry for her.
So thank you. Are you asking us for a motion? Yes, so I'd like to make a motion to provide a proclamation for Diane Bowden and for her years of service and gratitude from this commission.
I would second it.
We'll second that.
Everybody did.
Apparently, everybody said yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. There will be a resolution. Who's going to write it?
They will write it, yeah.
Cool. All right. I think we're at about the end of things, so do we have a motion to adjourn? Put your finger up there. This meeting is adjourned.